Jay Barber, everyone.
Jay Barber.
And welcome to this morning in May at Barber's house. We have Raine and Sue. This is a review of Francis's work assembled by Raine and Sue for the 2016 Meharana Sahabas program weekend, which was focused around Francis Brabazon, and it's focused around the time with his friends after 1969, when Francis had returned from India. And although he was a monthly poet, he always approached the people who came here as friends and invited, so people felt very welcome. And he encouraged all us the young ones to find ways to entertain the beloved. So here we go.
He welcomed us here every weekend, and we stayed here in the bunkhouse, now called the meeting hall. Every weekend it was just expected. They'll show up, and 12 to 20 people showed up every single weekend. I'd like you now to hear the voice on tape 1 of Francis Brabazon, a very brief excerpt from the 69 Darshan talk.
Jay Barber, I am amazed and filled with joy to discover that the beloved I have been serving for many years is truly a very mighty beloved. Of course, I have known all along that he was God. But there are so many gods. There is the God which people see in a shape of illusion, such as a sunset, or a mountain view, or a symphony, or whose hand is seen in one's not getting caught in a rainstorm, or in obtaining a good job. No doubt a very comfortable and profitable God to have. Well worth a Christian candle or some Hindu incense. But not a God one would offer one's life to. There is the God who rules the shining plains of consciousness, but sight of him would blind one. And the God who is beyond the plains is unknowable except by his own grace. And he is terribly careful to whom he gives that grace. So when beloved Barber used to tell me that he tell us that he was God, I used to think, yes, Barber, you are God all right. The one God and all the gods. But what good is that to me? In fact, I used to get so fed up with his being God that I wished he wasn't.
Just off the line.
I wished he was a sort of an Old Testament God, for whom I could slaughter a few lambs or a spotless young bull in return for some added acreage. I got so tired of his being so much God that I wrote a song about it and sang it to him. It goes something like, if only you were a bit less God, a bit more man, I wouldn't feel so much like someone upside down in a garbage can.
Then what happened was, we were archiving Sam's work and so on, only to find that the song that he refers to later on, that he even wrote a song about this and presented it to the beloved, we found the song. So I'd like you to enjoy a verse and a chorus of Sam singing the Upside Down in the Garbage Can song. Sang this song.
Sometimes I wish you were a bit less God, a bit less beloved, a bit more man. Sometimes I wish you were a bit less God, a bit less beloved, a bit more man. I feel like a man upside down in a garbage can. Your godness and your belovedhood are more than I can stand. I squirm like a worm turned up in the scorching sun. You are so much, oh God, such a beloved one.
After Mayor Barber dropped his body in 1969, Francis soon returned here to Avatar's abode, and he resumed his prolific writing schedule, usually from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. When we young ones, raise your hands, discovered Mayor Barber in the late 60s and early 70s, we flocked here to Avatar's abode and to be around Francis. Francis's work had the ideal qualities necessary to speak to us at that time, directly inspired by intimate contact with Mayor Barber and personally encouraged by him, a poet lover's sensitivity and sensibility to the beauty and wonder of the beloved, deep intellectual understanding and penetration, and the ability to convey subtlety and fine nuance of thought and feeling, a thorough background and knowledge of the lyric beloved poetry of the Sufis, Vaishnavas and others, as well as a non-academic approach suiting the mood of those times. But most importantly, we recognize Francis as the lover, a man whose life at every step had been dedicated to his beloved, untiring devotion to the one who had given Francis's life meaning. Now, Francis never gave talks. His life was all that was needed to be the example we aspired to be. He exposed us to new ideas and ways of thinking through introduction to music, all kinds of music, folk, classical, opera, light opera, from all countries, through books, Indian myths, Greek myths, Norse myths, stories of the saints, prose, poems, short stories from European and Eastern traditions, and through theatre, No, kabuki, Shakespeare, and experimental. It was this exposure and example that inspired us to sing and to write songs, poems, and perform skits in praise of the Divine Beloved. Now you have to remember, we were mainly kids from the suburbs of Brisbane and in surrounding areas. So this was, and Melbourne, surrounding areas. Melbourne, Sydney, excuse me, Adelaide and Perth.
No one was from Darwin.
Right. So this was so new to us. It was fantastic that we were introduced to all of these exotic and wonderful things. So they were heady days for us young ones. We were in love with Mayor Barber. It was a divine honeymoon phase of our lives. Now we spent our weekends here at Avatar's abode, while our non-Barber lover friends were going to parties and pubs, wherever, trying to figure their lives out. We were the lucky ones, having breakfast, lunch and dinner with Francis here at Avatar's abode. It was heaven, really. We stayed in the bunkhouse, which is now converted back to the meeting hall as it was when Barber visited. That's that building across the pathway there. And we stayed there in narrow bunk beds, men and women on each side of the room. It was Spartan to say the least, but I think I can safely speak for everybody when I say we had the best night's sleeps of our lives there. So meanwhile, while we were coming up here every weekend and being exposed to all of these wonderful ideas and new things, there was not only younger people moving to come and live closer to Avatar's abode, but families were coming closer as well. The Rouse family and Bruford family were already living on the property per Barber's orders. Now, Robert and Lorna Rouse had lived with Francis in Sydney and were witness to Francis's journey of coming to Barber via the Baron. Lorna also edited and typed Francis's early works, and Robert wrote many songs in those early days, and one of the songs he wrote is called The Star of Maroochydore. Some of you may remember it, and please sing along if you do, and if you don't, you will pick it up pretty easy, so please join us.
We're just going to do one verse of all the songs, but actually what we found out way later is, amazingly, it wasn't Robert that wrote this, it was Francis that wrote it, and Robert always sang it, but it was so Robert that we always thought Robert wrote it. Well, you wake up early morning to see that shining star, hanging like a great diamond way above Maroochydore. Well, you shout when you first saw dawn, when they heard the stars singing, to the sound of the golden horn, oh, the sound of the horn. Let the love and light of Mayhem ever shine on me. Let the light of the Avatar ever lovingly shine on me. Let the love and light of Mayhem ever shine on me. Let the light of the Avatar ever lovingly shine on me. But just a minute. Wait up, wait. We all showed up and we were, we were a tribe. We just came up here, we were going to be one with everybody, and we were going to eat meals with them and knock on their doors at all hours of the night and put our tents up and everything, but oh gracious, Francis had a word to say about that. I think the Professor Jeff Gunter ought to tell us what Francis had to say about that.
Indeed. Events build up from their own traditions, and Avatar's abode's anniversary is no exception to this. If you felt that the people looking after this place are a bit tough-minded, this may go some degree towards explaining it. It's a circular for visitors only, but you can all share it. Avatar's abode has not yet been in the financial position to build accommodation for pilgrims and visitors who wish to stay at the place overnight or for longer periods, except for men under bunkhouse conditions who can look after their own food. Cooking facilities are provided and supplies can be obtained in Woombye. As it becomes practicable, accommodation will be built for women and for families. At present, for them and for men who prefer normal comforts, there's a very satisfactory accommodation at the Woombye Caravan Park, $2.50 for one person. There are also many motels and camping areas within 10 miles. Although we live in a keenly competitive age, in which the vast majority of people have to work hard for their living, many city folk seem to think that in the country, rural areas, milk just flows from cows of plenty, and on every bush is a jar of honey, and so have no compunction about turning up to local lovers' houses for free meals and beds. This is no business, actually, of Avatar's abode. It's a private matter between locals and visitors. We merely point out that thoughtfulness is a divine quality, and practicing it is living Barber. It would also be thoughtful not to protract visits, but to lovingly exchange J. Barbers and get on with the purpose of the visit, remembering Barber, resting in him and repeating his name. Gossip sessions do nothing but lead the mind away from the beloved. It will be helpful to all concerned if visitors advise us of their intended visits to Avatar's abode. Francis Brabazon, November 1970.
So in these times we were beginning to sing and realise that songs would come out of this room, Francis's room, into us people staying, and that we could, that we really better go and learn how to sing and play and do all these things because they were a little over our heads. So the first piece that I learned at the end of 69 or the beginning of 70 was a beautiful book called Singing to the Eternal Beloved. It's an incredibly interesting book because it's the book that Francis wrote for Barber for his last birthday in 1968. It's part A through G, beautiful melodies and lovely simple concepts in a sort of Australian mantra form of how to follow the beloved. In one section of it, in section D, we get the whole of God speaks in a few verses. So I'm going to select a couple of them for you, and you can hear how Sing to the Eternal Beloved sections of it went, and how we really could only sing 5 notes at a time. Sing along, can we? May her Baba, beloved Baba, when you slept your great sleep, we were with you in that sleep. Eternal ancient one, eternal ancient one, eternal ancient one, beloved lover love, 3 in 1. May her Baba, beloved Baba, so evolved all the forms, stone and mineral, grass and worms, only Creator one, only Creator one, only Creator one, beloved lover love, 3 in 1. May her Baba, beloved Baba, thank our heart poor and strong, lastly men who love you and sing, only bring her the one, only bring her the one, only bring her the one, beloved lover love, 3 in 1. May her Baba, beloved Baba, make our hearts pure and strong, so that we can sing your song. Eternal ancient one, eternal ancient one, eternal ancient one, beloved lover love, 3 in 1. So at the same time, we had readings at people's homes, and Francis felt the readings should be in established families' homes, not single people that might change their addresses. So we'd go to readings. Well, our first reading that we went to was not at Bruford's, it was actually, I think at Maynard's, but anyway, the first reading we went to was Stay with God. And so from simple songs like this, we go straight into Stay with God. Well, we had to sit in a circle and we had to read every paragraph 3 times. Spaced out hippies in their teens or early 20s reading Stay with God, and each paragraph 3 times. And we got through the whole thing. We never did that again, though. After that, we read it straight through, and everything and the nothing would be in between, or the God-Man, or various books that we would do as readings, with Francis reading a paragraph along with the rest of us. And so in Stay with God, we have such beautiful pieces that these days people are tuning and singing and ward presenting workshops and people grasping to stay with God. We said to Francis, so, where do we get all these books and these words and everything? Or what do we do? And can you explain it to us?
Can you explain it to us?
Yeah.
Well, what does this mean? What does that mean?
Yes. And so Francis said, well, for goodness sake, just go and buy the books and read them, and then you'll know what it means.
All the references in the back of Stay With God, all those books that he refers to.
Instead
Instead of him telling us what, just buy the books and read all the books. And then find out yourself.
And we did. And we did follow it, without a cause. I had fallen in love with the coda in the old days, and I put a piece of the coda to music. Stay with God in whatever shape He shapes you, and work your work within the boundaries of that shape. Art is the shape of you, singing light through your hands, through your speech, imagining His image. Stay with God. Let the dream out the staying and the going of your form or your millions of forms. For they are not you. Whoever stays with God, they're not you. They're not you. So stay with God.
So have I writ what love told me to write, and every line betrays my poverty of love. As a poor man asked his charity displays a single shilling to our sight. Yet I am somewhat contented of my plight in that which love stooped down to ask of me, thus honouring me in whom no others see worth, myself the least. Thus does love with light and gentle grace encourage on his way the least of us, taking each by the hand he's laboured with, using the same labour to raise him to still greater favour, even perhaps to love's own path, to stand in light when silence speaks its shining day.
So various books came out in Francis's room, songs, scripts, skits, and so on. And then finally, we went to India with Francis in 1973. And Sue has a big story about that.
Yeah, so we all went to India with Francis, 70. We first went in Amatithi, 73, as a group with Francis. And one of the stories one of the things that happened, it may have been 73, it might have been 73, 74. We were in a group, we were on the train, and we took the train from Bombay through to Pune. And at Manmad, if any of you have taken the train, there is a switching area. So the train stopped at Manmad, and it jerked to a stop, and Francis got out. And he got out on the platform, got a cup of chai, and was just standing there drinking in those clay cups that they have. And he was drinking it, and he was just being Francis, just looking up and thinking, who knows what he was thinking. And the train starts to move, and we all go, Francis! And we have our noses pressed to the glass of the window as we start to move away from the station. Sam Saunders leaps out of the train, if the train was moving, he leaps out of the train and goes and stands next to Francis, and the train moves away, and we've got our noses pressed against the glass, and we see them as we move away. No! What would happen if we got to Mayorzad and Francis wasn't with us? What would the Mandalay do? We've lost Francis at Manmad. But what happens, we didn't realise that the train goes a little bit and then it stops. They just switch the lines up. So the point man, that's his name, the point man. So we didn't realise that, but we thought that we were going to be leaving Francis behind. But all was well. We collected Francis, we collected
But
Sam.
Francis knew this.
Yes, that's why Francis was looking so content on the platform, because he knew this, but we'd never taken the train before. We were like 20 years old, we had no idea. And I just never forget that panic and fear we all felt as the train moved away and there's Francis on the platform. But that incident brought about this wonderful little song.
Pardon me, boy, is this the train to Amanaga? My foot's caught in the line, and I don't feel like dying. There's gonna be quite a party at the station, so help me up there. There's not a second to spare. Now, thank you, my boy, I'd have been a whole lot sooner if only I could find my way out of Puna. I'll be so glad when at last we reach Mariband. Oh, train to Amanaga, won't you choo-choo me home? If we reach the station at 8:45, eat a few chapatis and everything's fine. Hear a chugga-chugga, we'll even kiss and hug ya when we see the sun come up in Amanaga. When you hear the whistle blowing away ta-ta, then you know that Mariband is not very far. You shovel all the souls in, you gotta keep it rolling. Choo-choo, Naga, here we are. So going to India brought about a change in what the mood and things we did when we got back, but it also created a change really slightly in our attitude and our behaviour around Francis, because we found out when we got there that he was a Mandali. I mean, we knew it in words, but we actually saw it, and when we got off the bus at Marazad, Francis thought he was staying in the hotel with us, by the way, in the Ashok. That quickly changed when the Mandali got him out to his room at Marazad. But when Francis got out of the bus in front of us and standing all very formally, and this is his flock and the Sydney flock, he said, "So now you're all going to meet a real man." And so we all filed in with Francis into Mandali Hall, and Erich says, "Well, how did you people all get involved with a real man?" Me and Francis.
That's two respected and loved each other so much. Real men.
Yes. So then, what had been happening, we didn't know this at the time, and you'll hear about it as we go along, but Francis had been assembling a whole group of songs, and some of those were the songs we sang in India. Well, along we came with all this sort of almost classical music amongst all the folk music of the Americans, and standing there singing, you know, Beethoven and Bach and goodness knows what, and beautiful, well-written songs. And the Mandali became very attached to this song, and do sing along. Meher, all the world is crying your dear name, crying with joy your name. Each voice is a lovely opening flower in the shape of your name. Meher, oh God, perfect man, Meher, love's great arching span, from beyond to our dust bowl, from earth back to our final goal. The most ancient one, the most cloud's great arching span, from beyond to our dust bowl, from earth back to our final goal. The most ancient one, the most present one, the most gentle one, the most loving one. He who infinitely cares, he who dries all our tears and makes the sun of love shine in us. So we were exposed suddenly from our 4-year crash course at the Francis Brabazon University at Advertise Abode into all sorts of other music that we hadn't experienced. And we heard a little bit on a couple of CDs, but record albums, but not a lot of other Barber music. But one of the things we got very attached to was Indian music. Now, for anybody that's read the preface to A Singing to the Eternal Beloved, Francis had a bee in his bonnet about people singing songs in other languages, that they should sing them in their own language because only their own language could express their heart. And so, quite a bee in his bonnet about that. But we got attached to this Tukaram song, but with our Australian accents, instead of Sachi Bolo, it was Sachi Bolo, Sachi Sachi Bolo. Mortified was our mentor and never said a word at the time. But as soon as we got back, he wrote this wonderful version of words to the something of a Tukaram melody. And some of you know it, so you can sing along with us. May her beloved, may her Baba, may her beloved, may her Baba, may her is the all-sounding lovely name of the one who was yet again became. May her beloved, may her Baba, may her beloved, may her Baba, may her means mother, may her means mother, may her means sister, may her means brother, may her beloved, may her Baba, may her beloved, may her Baba, may her means morning of another day, hold fast to his armor and do not stray. May her beloved, may her Baba, may her beloved, may her Baba, sing his lovely name throughout all the day, sing until singing becomes your way. May her beloved, may her Baba, may her beloved, may her Baba.
So, meanwhile, back at Advertise Abode, we were having evenings with Francis and also making meals with Francis. And one of the big rituals was the tea making here. And some of you will remember, if you hear that time, it was very, very important to make the tea properly. So one little story from me is that one day I made the tea, brought Francis's cup to him, and he took a sip and, who made this tea? I did, Francis. And go back and make it again. It wasn't hot enough. So from that day, remaking the tea for Francis, I learned a good lesson about tea making. If you come to my house, I will be happy to make you a tea. It'll be piping hot and it'll be just perfect. And all of that comes from Francis. It was scary as hell. It was very scary.
Susie, can I just...
Tell a tea story, please.
I came in 1970 with Michael and Chris Gray, and we were staying in the bunkhouse and having tea with Francis. And Michael would usually make Francis's tea in the afternoon. One afternoon, Michael wasn't around, and I had been watching the tea making, fresh from America. And so without Francis knowing about it, oh, no, once I got up to make the tea, and Francis said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Oh, I'm just going to make you tea." "Don't you touch it." So I thought, okay. So a few days went by, Michael wasn't around, it was time for tea, and I snuck into the kitchen and prepared everything and brought it out. Gave him his cup of tea, we sat there chatting, he was sitting here, right here, having his fag. And he finished his tea, and I said, how was the tea, Francis? Very good, thank you. I said, yeah, it was my first attempt. I'll never forget the look on his face.
So another cup of tea story I'd like to include because we have a visitor here that created this cup of tea story, and it was Jim Meyer, who was a conscientious objector and had become a medico in the war, and he came here on R&R and he caught a train up, I guess, and then he hitchhiked up from Brisbane to advertise a boat to visit Francis with his, his rations. Well, what he had in his ration, so he said to Francis, will I make you a cup of tea? In those days, it was just a little bench over here with an electric jug and one little hot plate. And so Jim boils the kettle and he pulls out of his bag 2 tea bags. There was no such thing in Australia as tea bags. These were actually some sort of ration developed, I think, for the Vietnam War. And so he makes them, and he's making them away, and then there's nowhere to put the bags. There's no bench, there's no nothing. So he does this and puts it on the window ledge. And suddenly he feels someone staring at him now. And he looks around, and Francis is standing in the doorway, and he says, "Barbaric, you're a barbarian." So there was a real change in tone after coming back from India. We were complex ideas, poetry, songs, plays, even one anniversary. This mic is not working. Can you turn it up? Something's happening to it. So then even sending me to the Japanese consulate to get films on no drama and kabuki. The education, we're getting really highbrow here. We did plays from The Singing Threshold, The Quest, The Moon. I know The Moon was June 6th, 1971, because I was in it. The Bridge, the Sydney people put The Bridge on, all these wonderful plays that were in Singing Threshold. And then we moved on after we got back to this complicated play called Being is Dying by Loving. Now Francis had written this play, and he hadn't realised that 29 songs or 27 songs or something in 28 scenes would go for 3 hours and everybody would be asleep by the time it finished. So in actual fact, the dawn song, Being is dying by loving, this is the song which I the dawn am bringing. Awake, arise for love's dear sake, awake and sing, opens the play. Well, it's all these men that have a dream to meet Barbara on the beach, and all these things happen to them, and then the dawn song is at the end. So all the people that fell asleep got woken by the dawn at the end of the play.
And Barbara often used the ocean as a symbol of divine being, and Francis used that simile in a lot of his work. I'd like to read you the narration to Being is Dying by Loving. Meher Baba often used the ocean as a symbol of divine being and likened us, people, to drops of that ocean. We are very ocean itself, but we are only conscious of ourselves as drops. The why and wherefore of this is a long story, and would bore beloved Baba if I were to attempt to recount it. Sufficient here to say, the ocean becomes a drop, but remains ocean. The huge becomes a tiny and remains huge. The boundless becomes bounded and remains boundless. And because of the love of the ocean for each of its separated drops, periodically the ocean becomes a drop while still retaining its oceanity. This divine drop is the avatar, who suffers the limitations of each drop, while at the same time reminding it that in reality it is ocean. And God set a rainbow in the sky as a sign that no drops will ever be abandoned, but will eventually return to the ocean and become ocean.
Francis became educated about surfers and surfing through Michael, and this sweet song reflects some of that. Make her beloved, beloved, make her Baba. That is a message to me, sung by the loud sounding sea. Out there in the surf, a young man rides a curling wave to freedom. On the beach, a boy plays in the sand. He too is a king with a kingdom. Make her beloved, beloved, make her Baba. That is the message to me, sung by the loud sounding sea. On my own far ocean wandering, burning sun and ice encrusted sail. In my search for you, beloved, may her, I learned that your name was all your tale. Make her beloved, beloved, make her Baba. That is the message to me, sung by the loud sounding sea. Here in love we stick to our song stations, waiting for the glory of his word. Pour the blood of song out in oblations to our fair beloved and dear Lord. Make her beloved, beloved, make her Baba. That is a message to me, sung by the loud sounding sea.
Now, Word at World's End was published in 1973 and have the books that we're referring to in the front here for those of you who are not familiar with them, available at the bookstore. It was published in 1973 and still stands today as a most eloquent document of the death rattle of the contemporary spiritual wasteland.
Say that again.
Not my words.
Go ahead. Say that again.
And still stands today, Word at World's End still stands today as the most eloquent document of the death rattle of the contemporary spiritual wasteland. To quote from the foreword, in 5 sections of diverse poetic style, Francis Brabazon relentlessly wields his caustic wit to peel away the last veils covering our dying civilization. 73. This book couples unparalleled imagery with a stunning honesty as the author turns his penetrating gaze to the art, the religion, and the everyday life of man on this planet today. The Word at World's End will in centuries future stand as the most eloquent document of the death rattle of the contemporary spiritual wasteland. Yet the book is Phoenix also, sowing the seeds of the new humanity amidst the ruins of cadaverous illusions. Whoa.
This was the announcement to try and sell this book. Good on you, Rick Chapman. That was really, really gutsy. Oh, but in it, you know, there's all these awful things that people love. You know, but I love from Richard Lockwood. God numb our minds, stop the pain of loneliness. Peace like soft rainfall, wash away the rubbed-in stain. Tomorrow we must march again. God numb our minds and stop the pain of loneliness. Peace like soft rainfall, and wash away the rubbed-in stain. Tomorrow we must march again. Oh, oh gosh, peace. There's not many Bible lovers who write stuff about peace, you know. I know someone else who wrote something about peace. One so lovely is shining in all things, one so lovely and pure. One so lovely is shining in all things, one so lovely and pure. One beloved is calling to him, one beloved of all. One beloved is calling us to him, one beloved of all. May peace and peace and peace be everywhere, for all that lives is full of the Lord, for all that lives is full of the Lord. Oh, gracious, did I go off script? Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Peace is always good at any time. So, back to World at World's End. After the flood of our desolation, after the twisted steel and the broken concrete, after the flood of grace of God-man's word in our hearts, and our hearts and the face of the earth had been washed clean of stain and monuments, those of us who remained after the fall of the cities and survived the wandering came together in silence, in an open place, in a new morning, empty but for the sun. Newly risen out of the ocean. And one found voice for all of us. We have to admit, God, that you did the right thing. We had become loused up. A man's word had the stink, but not the weight of his turd. We had forgotten, every son of a bitch of us, how to sing. What is a man until he has been drowned and has risen again from the flood of you? With a river of song in his mouth, has found his own shape in the image of the blood of you? Ha! In everything we had been wrong. We did not believe that God-man was your face, that in his word was the total grace already present in the creation song. We had lost the gift of high decision. We conceived that tomorrow was merely today's revision.
How beautiful you are, what a dreaming in the dawn is your brow. What oceans of love are your eyes, what music about you singing is in your throat, what a proud new architecture is in your hands. How perfectly shaped are your feet for all beyond journeying. Then of all things, what happened next was quite strange. Out of the room came an old book, the East-West Gathering. We actually had done so much work on things in Journal Beloved and plays and skits and being astounded by loving, but it had got completely overlooked. And various people started putting it on, and then we found out that Francis had actually written 29 songs in 8 weeks for the East-West Gathering to go in the book, and he had sung them all to Barbara with old melodies. He apologised to Barbara that they had old melodies, but he did have to write this book very quickly. But Barbara said, don't worry about that, the melody's just to tickle the ear to let the words in. Take 3, please.
We have come to this infinitely beautiful one, and see under the shade of wine glasses, upheld for him to fill, when it so pleased him. And when the melody of pouring wine begins, we are lost to all but love. Time now is measured by the duration of its song. We did not say so-and-so times ago, we say a song or two songs ago. Tomorrow is this only as the moment of his mood, when he will bestow his grace and grace.
In the depths of the ocean is a pearl. Will you both swimmer bring it in your hands? It is yours by right of heritage, the pearl kingship over all the land. Do you remember? Do you understand? In the depths of the ocean is a pearl. Will you both swimmer bring it in your hand? It is yours by right of heritage, the pearl kingship over all the land. Do you remember? Do you understand? Yeah. So what happened at the East-West Gathering was very interesting. Maher Baba, during the 62 gathering of East-West Gathering, at this time Baba decided to give a first draft of an English translation of a Hafez ghazal, the Persian poet, to Brabazon to versify it into a tighter form. We have someone Persian here. Into a tighter form. And when Brabazon completed this task, Maher Baba asked him to read out the fruits of his effort to a very large group of Westerners who were present for the East-West Gathering. And it is thought that Baba said, or something similar, that this was the first time that many had heard Hafez recited in a clear and meaningful language to them in the English language. And judging from this event, it appeared that Maher Baba's wish had come true, that not only Brabazon but all the Western followers to have some experience of the ghazal of this master poet. And the versification of Brabazon reads as follows: Although you have not received love's garden, one day this desert will become a garden, so be not grieved.
Do not turn your heart away, nor expostulate against the beloved, but bear your present state,
and be not grieved. Let this disgusted mind and troubled heart be stilled. One day desire for union will be fulfilled, so be not grieved.
Behind the curtain a secret game is being played that you know not. So don't give up, nor be dismayed, or grieved.
Once you have set out for the beloved's abode, do not let mere stones and thorns turn you from the road, or be grieved.
Maya, the principle of illusion, will do her best to thwart your labour. But when you have a captain like Noah, you will reach safe harbour.
So be not grieved. When this friend is the same as God, don't plague him with petitions, but suffer gladly love's rules, trials and conditions, and be not grieved. Brabazon became increasingly interested in the idea of creating the English language ghazal based on the tradition of Hafez, not only because it would be a new Western literary form of love poetry for him to explore, but also since it was Maher Baba's favourite poetry.
At the end of the East-West Gathering, the Westerns had to leave. This is a recount of that leaving of Maher Baba from the gathering. He came at 8 o'clock. The sadness of this farewell for the Westerners cannot be described. None expected to ever see their beloved again. Yet the sadness was made shining, for the sun of his love was in their heart skies, and would remain there through deaths and births till they were absorbed into its reality forever. The artie was sung, and he got back into his car. But the lovers would not let the car move. They pressed round it for a last look at their beloved's golden face and a last touch of his white hand. Imperceptibly, the car moved forward, stopped, and moved on again. In that time that it takes a man to walk a mile, it moved only 100 yards. At last it reached the road, and the lovers gave up their attempts to grasp and hold eternity in their small hands, and they fell back, and the car gathered speed, crossed the bridge and disappeared, snapping the threads of their eyes, which streamed after beloved God to bind and bring him back.
So we'll just sing the last verse of the song that goes with that, just so as you know the context. Eternal, my lovely white dove arose with a cry and sped like a shaft of light. Oh, beautiful dove, return from the sky and comfort me with your sight. Return, oh, return, my love, from the sky, for you are my whole delight. Return, oh, return with your sweet glad cry and comfort me in my night. Return, oh, my dove, and pluck out the dart of love, or else I must die. Return, oh, my love, for I've made my heart your space in which you can fly. Return, oh, my love, to walk through my heart means I must surely die. Return, oh, red love, to the sky of my heart, there you can in freedom fly. Oh, mayhem, my love, my soul. Oh, mayhem, my love, my soul. So we went from that actually to something quite complicated at that point. We went to the East-West gathering. We went from the East-West gathering to the publication at last of Industai Singh, a group of poems that had been written back as far as 62 and 63, most of them, and read every morning to Meher Baba for his approval until Francis got some sort of drift of what Baba wanted. But of course they couldn't just be based on Hafiz, it could be the newspaper the day before or whatever he felt Baba was involved in for the next day's poem. And at one point some people came along with their family and asking Baba for the right wives and the right this and the right that, a huge family. There were several weddings going on and asking Baba for things. And Baba was getting quite impatient with this. And he suddenly turned to Francis, hiding in the back or sitting in the back as usual, and said, "Francis, what would you like to have? You can have anything in the universe that you would like. Right now, what would you like to have?" And Francis says, "A bloke wouldn't mind if he never heard the bloody name of Hafez again."
Oh my God.
And apparently Marnie said Baba was in a good mood for several days after.
So Industai Singh, Francis's guzzles.
Industai Singh. So what we'd like to do with Industai Singh is sing you a really funny one. And Sue's going to talk to you about that.
So this is a ghazal that you will recognise, hopefully, talks about the Mandali and us. So there's going to be a test later to see if you can recognise which Mandali Francis was talking about and where we, as his lovers, are in this also.
Ship is sinking and no one can tell the captain. Ship is sinking but no one can tell the captain. He has left the bridge and locked himself in his cabin. He has left the bridge and locked himself in his cabin. The first the purser recounts cricket scores. The bosun mumbles, the purser recounts cricket scores. Cricket scores. The crew tie flags to lifebuoys and chuck them into the waves. The crew tie flags to lifebuoys and chuck them into the waves. The flags bear messages such as God is love and He saves. God is love and He saves. The fish singly and in pairs come up to the surface. The fish singly and in pairs come up to the surface. Read and form in circles on the waves. Read and form in circles on the waves. Scarf of lace on the wakes. Scarf of lace. Why do men never sign up for long sea voyages? Why do men never sign up for long sea voyages? Is not God in small houses and picture book pages? Is not God in small houses and picture book pages?
I am by nature a landsman, a lover of quiet streams. Somehow or other, sea and ships got woven into my dreams. Now their ship is sinking, and strangely it seems no disaster. Strangely it seems no disaster. Men also die in houses. Why not at sea with the master? Why not at sea with the master? So did you all get who was who? So the ship is sinking, but no one can tell the captain. He has left the bridge and locked himself in his cabin. Barber. The first mate writes letters. Erich. Patching up family wars. The bosun mumbles. Padre. The purser recounts cricket scores. Padre. Pendu, sorry. Pendu. I said Pendu. The crew tie flags to lifebuoys. The Mundley. And chuck them into the waves. The fish, singly and in pairs, that's all of us that came. Right? Read and form into circles on the waves, scarf of lace. So there you
That's
go.
who it all is, hidden in there. We sang it for ages before we worked it out.
Yeah.
But so then, of course, after In Dust I Sing, after Francis died posthumously, was published The Beloved Is All in All. And so over the years, Francis wanted other people to tune all of the guzzles. He felt that Barber appreciated guzzles to melody, and perhaps in the English language guzzle, we could create a new form and a new way of understanding the guzzle in our own English language guzzle, as they had done in Farsi. And so many people have tuned, many of them, and one time some person said to Francis at the Samadhi, we go most years with Francis, I think like 6 trips to India, and they said, oh wow, he did the wrong version of Guzzle 1. Francis said, look, a bloke wouldn't mind if there was 100 versions of every guzzle. So there is no right version, just get in there if you can think of a tune to the 150 guzzles in Dust I Sing. And then of course, In Dust I Sing is for the seeker. It's agony, it bashes your head around, it gets rid of all the egotistical ideas or the assumptions or the expectancies that you have on the path. But if you read a lot of the guzzles in The Beloved Is All in All, it's kind of there, he's kind of arrived, you know, it's got a lot of the sense of resignation in The Beloved Is All in All. And one thing I'd just like to read to you rather than sing it, it's done to it, the Sam Saunders melody, but you know, in the olden days, Francis always wondered why his poetry wasn't accepted, but time was, and not so long ago either, when I sought for rewards. Now I look on while others take their bow, and the world applauds. My masters taught me, Ambition is a pretty bubble. My master taught me ambition's just a pretty bubble. The fairest edifice today, tomorrow it's a heap of trouble. And he's taught me not to trouble about anything except keeping my heart comfortable, for there the infant God is sleeping. He has overcome in the beloved is all in all of these things of wanting fame or to be accepted or whatever. So we're going to close, hopefully with, do we have copies of a participatory song here? Michael can come up here and read a bit with us. We need some good Australian accents here. He's busy with his film.
Well,
Yeah, okay.
we've got lots of Aussies here that will be happy
Yes,
with
it
you.
wasn't like American. Raine can read one. There you go. And you can just run in front of people who you know have very strong accents. You see, in Melbourne, we don't speak with a strong Australian accent. We're more British than the Queen. But as you get further north, just like America, as you get further south, the accents get broader as you get further north. Well, that's what us Melbourne people think anyway. Raine, do you have the? Do you have my copy with the chords on it?
I do have your copy of the chords.
Oh, last.
Just see, how will you remember it?
Yeah, no, not about chords. Not interested in chords.
I understand that totally.
Yeehaw! This will be our close. This is Barbara's Making It New. Most great poets have a Making It New, with glamour and all, in aspect to their work. Barbie is making it new. Barbie is making it new for you. Barbie is in your hands to do. Barbie is making it new. Barbie is making it new for you. Barbie is in your hands to do. You have a whole day in front of you. Make it new and make it true. Do not bother about the past. It went because it could not last and has no place in the you. Barbie is making it new. Barbie is making it new for you. Barbie is in your hands to do. Sit down and God said, who am I? And the creation came into being, and every atom of it passed by him for his seeing. Barbie is making it new. Barbie is making it new for you. Barbie is in your hands to do. Number 2.
Then he said to them, go now to your respective stations, stone stuff to stone mass, people to tribes and nations.
Barbie is making it new. Barbie is making it new for you. Barbie is in your hands to do.
And he said, I will visit each and all of you in due season.
For we come here.
Oh, sorry. For we go here with an infinite divine
cohesion. Barbie is making it new. Barbie is making it new for you. Barbie is in your hands to do. 4.
And God put lightning in the sky and gave them voice. And that's not Australian.
No.
I thought we'd better, welcome
Bang it
us.
on, you bang it on.
And the rainbow, so that he could behold and rejoice.
Oh, Barbie is making it new. Barbie is making it new for you. Barbie is in your hands to do.
Barbie, here's just read that one again.
And God saw that nothing was ill-made or had any blot. And he said to himself
With a smile, who am I not? Oh, Barbie is making it new. Barbie is making it new for you. Barbie is in your hands to do. You have a whole day in front of you. Make it new and make it true. Do not bother about the past. It went because it could not last. It